So we're at tutorial 7, exercise 2, where we did the rival hypotheses, and I'm doing a typed papers and grades, and I'm just going to take you guys through what is required, or the process you should be going through to flesh out whether something is a confound, and then the points you should be hitting to explain to someone else how it is a confound, how to convince somebody else that there is a confound in the study. Started with the simple papers, the typed paper grades example in the tutorial, which basically claims that there's a correlation between students who type papers and good grades, such that students who type get higher grades and students who write their papers get lower grades, and they use this as motivation that buying a typewriter will help a student get better grades. Which on the surface seems pretty ridiculous, but let's break it down in a more structured way. So the first thing I want to do if I'm thinking about confounds is I want to know what my study actually is, the properties of my study. So the first thing I would do is figure out what my independent variable is. So my IV would be, I guess, how the assignment is written, whether it's handwritten or whether it's typed. So assignment, and I would just go written versus typed. I hope you can read my handwriting. My tutorials have struggled this year. Okay, so that's my IV. The second thing I want to know, of course, is my dependent variable, which in this is, let's just say it's grades, so I'm just going to use GPA as a thing. And then, of course, the relationship, the results of the study. If I'm going to say these results are confounded, I need to know what the results actually are to see if I can find a confound that makes sense. So the results would be, if I just draw a little results page, my DV would be GPA on the side here. Hope you can see me. GPA on the side here. And down here I would have, say, written and typed papers, the two levels of my IV. And I would say if typed papers get better grades, it would look something like this. And that's a critical result that we need to be explaining. So, over to our confound checklist. The first thing we've got is covariant with an IV. Then we have to figure out if it plausibly affects the DV, if we can make a story that justifies that it could actually impact the measurements in our study. And 3, explains a critical result, which of course is very important. Something cannot confound a study unless it is accounting for a result or offering an alternative explanation, and this often gets missed quite a bit. So first of all, covary with IV. That implicitly tells you that it needs to vary, and also that it's systematic. So something that there's always going to be things that vary. We study psychology, there's constant variation everywhere. That's why it's so difficult to study. But when we're talking about confounds, it needs to systematically co-vary with the IV. So it needs to change with the levels of the IV. And if this other variable or potential confound stays constant over all your levels of your IV, or if it varies randomly or consistently equally across your whole experiment in all conditions, then it's not a confound. It might be a sensitivity issue, but it's not a confound. So first of all, covariant with IV. So a few things that jump out to me with written versus typed papers is, I guess the first one is socioeconomic status. So those who write their papers probably have a lower SES, and those who type their papers potentially high SES. Now I have to figure out if, so this is step 1. It co-varies with the IB. Written, low SES. This changes typed, high SES. So SES co-varies with how these assignments are written. My second step is figuring out how SES could possibly impact our DB, which is GPA. Aside from written type papers, if you say this is the mechanism, then you're just explaining the critical result and not a confound. So, how can SES influence GPA? Basically, we're talking about mechanisms, or I guess if you were to analyze it or were to experiment on it, they could be mediators. So generally, I think people in different SES or higher SES have more educated parents. So I would put education of parents. The more educated your parents are, the more help you get with homework at home, the more words you're exposed to growing up, because educated people have larger vocabularies. Yeah, I think that's a good one. You might just have, or educated parents, or you might just have books / internet at home. So this is something else that's not accounted for. So people who have high SES might have a home library, they might have really fast internet, a computer that they can use at home, all these things that allow self-learning and other reasons that lead to GPA. Any of these are acceptable, anything you can think of like that. So that is how it could plausibly affect the dependent variable of GPA. So we've sussed that out. Number 3 is, does it explain the critical result? And this is often overlooked, or at least not explicitly said. So you need to explain the critical result. First, tell me what the critical result is. And when we say, generally when we say result, it's not an interpretation. A result is like a score higher in this condition versus that condition, or in this case, a main effect of your IB, which we've only got 1 in this case. Main effect of assignment, whereby typed papers, or students who type their papers get better grades than students who have written their assignments. So this is our critical result. Mention it before going on to whether it actually does account for it. So to explain if something actually does account for a critical result, you need to explicitly tell the reader what the critical result is that you're trying to explain. And so main effect of typed and written. So one thing, you just have to play it through and see if it actually works. So if an assignment was written, this would be my low SES. And if an assignment was typed, this would be my high SES. And then I just want to see if the results kind of overlapped. If hypothetically written and typed didn't make a difference, but SES did, how would the results play out? So I would imagine that high SES students, because of these factors, would get better grades than low SES students. So the pattern would look something like this, which is identical to the proposed pattern between written and typed, or i.e. explains the critical result. And that's the full process of what you need to do to identify a confound, which means that's what you need to do when you are trying to justify a confound in an assignment or any type of written work. So first point out, so my IB is this, written versus typed. Socioeconomic status correlates with how, or potentially correlates with how a student would write their assignment. So a student with high SES would be more likely to type their assignment, and a student with low SES would be more likely to write their assignment. And you should be saying something like that. So like lining up how each level of your confound in your IB link. Step 2, plausibly affects DV. So how does this potentially impact your study? So SES or socioeconomic status could have an impact on grade point average via the fact that their parents might be more educated, so there's more encouragement on education, or there's more pressure, or you can ask your parents for help with homework. They can educate you more at home over the dinner table. Just being exposed to educated people generally will educate you. And also they might have people of higher SES probably have more books or internet access at home, which could also impact their grade point average. And then 3, does it explain the critical result? Differences in socioeconomic status could account for the main effect of assignment, whereby those students who typed their assignment would be higher SES and would get better grade point averages, and those who have written their assignment are lower SES and have lower GPAs. And that's it. Covary with Ivy. How does it affect the DV? What is that relationship? And then, how does it account for the critical result? The main effect of this is it could be explained by SES. And that's it.